Cakes, angel pies, Pop-Tarts of every variety. It is back. Tea and Tarot is happening right here, right now on my YouTube channel. I'm very excited for a return to Tea and Tarot. It has been quite some time. If you do want to catch up on former episodes of Tea and Tarot, I've made a handy little playlist down below, so you can go in there and take a look at some old episodes. And if you go back to the very first episode of Tea and Tarot, you will see just how much my confidence has grown and how much the quality of my videos has grown over time. And if you were there with me right at the very beginning when I did my first Tea and Tarot episode and you are still here with me now, then I just want to say thank you so much, and I would like to dedicate this episode of Tea and Tarot to you, darling, for being with me all this time, from way back in the day when I had 5 subscribers and I was called the 4 Queens. I really appreciate it so much. If you're new around here and you do not know what Tea and Tarot is, it's basically a series which allows me to indulge in 2 of my favourite things in the whole of the universe, tea and, yes, you guessed it, tarot. And I kind of combine them together, and it's really just an excuse to sling cards, sip tea and chat shit. And normally I choose a specific topic that I'm going to be kind of delving into the cards for, and what I do is I just select some cards, I draw, you know, random draw some cards just as you would with an ordinary tarot reading, and I kind of reflect on the messages in relation to the theme. And every so often I have a random wisdom episode, which is probably going to be the next one I'll do, where I just look at cards in a very open way and I don't necessarily have a theme, so that can be really fun as well. But today I thought I would do a Tea and Tarot episode on time management. I've been thinking a lot lately about the ways in which we make time work for us, the different sort of slippery slopes we can get into with regard to linear time and making friends with the clock face, and I wanted to draw some cards to help us to lean into the topic of time management, making sure we're doing what we want to be doing with our time, making sure we feel good about the way that we spend our time. So me and Mr. Johnny C are going to pull some cards from the Holly Simple Tarot. Now, where have I put it? Hang on a second. It's literally right here in front of me, guys. There we go. Holly Simple Tarot. One of the newer additions to my collection, and if you do want to see the unboxing and first impressions of Holly Simple Tarot, I did film it and upload it here on the channel, so please do go right ahead and take a look at that unboxing and first impressions. I will leave that in the down bar below if you are interested in taking a look at my initial thoughts on this deck. I do use this deck regularly for clients now. I really enjoy it. It is a very valuable addition to my tarot collection. I love the colours, I love the style of illustration. It's definitely something that is quirky, playful, whimsical to an extent, but also gives really meaningful and profound readings, as well as looking great when there are a number of cards, you know, presented together in a spread formation. It really does look good. So I'm going to be working with my Holly Simple Tarot, and I'm basically going to go ahead and draw 3 cards today in this Tea and Tarot episode, thinking specifically about how we can make time work for us, how we can improve our relationship with time, what kinds of issues we tend to find that we are challenged with when it comes to time management, and just basically see what comes up and do a little bit of rambling and a little bit of interpreting. I'm super excited. I wish I could drink my tea, my sour cherry tea from Taylor's of Harrogate, darling. Very posh. But unfortunately I can't drink it yet because it's so bloody hot that it's going to burn my lips off if I even try, so I'm going to have to wait that one out. But if you're sipping anything during this episode of Tea and Tarot, let me know down below what you've got in your cup. I am definitely always open to ideas for new blends, whether it's loose blends that you make yourself at home or things that you can purchase online or locally. I do have an ever-expanding tea collection. I've kind of slowed down on it in the last year or so. I'm definitely just enjoying sort of getting used to blends that I'm drinking over and over again. But I do like to put new things into my collection of teas as well. If something really takes my fancy and catches my eye and I think, oh, I've never tried rhubarb and lime before or whatever, then I'm like, I might have to drop that into my basket. Oops, shit, there we go. Nightmare. I'm going to have to buy it now, bloody hell. I will be showing cutaways of the cards, so I'm not going to be like holding them up to the camera and all that kind of thing. I'm just going to show cutaways of the 3 cards that come through in this particular Tea and Tarot episode, so do keep your eye on the screen if you do want to see cutaways of the cards. So let's give a little bit of direction to the 3 cards that we're going to pull in this Tea and Tarot episode today. I've decided that the first of the 3 cards that I'm going to pull is going to be connected to looking at the underlying reasons for the issues that we have with time management. So many of us have these ongoing issues with time management. We seem to have a massive resistance to doing what we said we were going to do, or making time work for us in a meaningful way. There are so many people that have really big, bold, gorgeous intentions, don't they, with regard to what they want to do with their time. And actually, unfortunately, a lot of those commitments and plans don't end up coming to pass. And that tends to be a source of major frustration and resentment for so many people. So I want to look at the underlying reasons, I think, for that, and just see what comes through. And bear in mind, when I'm doing a tea and tarot episode, it's not like I'm doing a personal reading for you as the viewer. Some things that I say are going to resonate with you. Some things are not going to be quite so applicable. They're not going to be necessarily concerns of yours that you're having in life. The point is not to give something that will make everybody resonate with every point. I do not believe that tarot readings should be general. I believe that tarot readings do their best work when they are extremely specific, i.e. you pay for a reading or you're receiving a reading and it's just for you and it's just your issues that are being focused on. So I have a really strong belief in that. However, what the tea and tarot episodes are more about is just basically leaning into a specific topic that maybe we all have our own issues with, or a lot of us relate to, and just seeing if there's anything that comes through in the cards that we can take away and chew on. You know, so it's much more using the cards for reflection and analysis and contemplation than it is for me to do my little you know, psychic, you know, party trick thing on you and, you know, be very accurate and be very spot on about your situation. I'm not actually shooting for that. You know, that's not really what tea and tarot is for. So do bear that in mind. So let's just have a look then at the first of the three cards from Holly Simple Tarot, looking at the underlying reasons why so many of us tend to have these issues with time management and making time work for us. And the card that's come through is the Tower, which is a really interesting one to come through. And if you take a look at the Tower from Holly Simple Tarot, it is a very different concept, and artistically it's done in a very different way to the Tower as it ordinarily looks with that burning structure. You know, the Tower in the Holly Simple Tarot represents an injury, it represents an imperfection, and you can see also that almost tattoo-like eye with the tears coming from it, which represent that sense of injury. In fact, double injury, because you've got the hand that's been severed from the arm and then the finger that's been severed from the hand. So it works with the same kinds of concepts and themes, but there is a very different sort of aesthetic quality to the Tower in Holly Simple, which is really interesting. So I think with the Tower, very often we don't know what we've got till it's gone, and that can definitely be an underlying reason for so many who struggle with time management. For me, the Tower can sometimes be about massive regret, and it can be about not seeing the full depth and breadth of what was at stake until we actually see it in the rearview mirror. And at that point, we're very upset. At that point, we find ourselves wishing we'd done things differently. And when it comes to time management, I think it's very much true that many of us look back at the time that we just spent perhaps in a state of non-movement, in a kind of zombie-like state, not really doing what we had set out to do. And then later on, as we look back over how we spent that time, suddenly we have a very clear perspective on things, and we really wish that we had spent the time differently and done something more productive, more responsible, more in keeping with our ambitions and our areas of focus. And suddenly that pain becomes very real. I think the pain of regret, of wasted time, is something that very many of us try to run away from confronting. And when we actually confront the pain and the loss of wasted time, it's really difficult. You know, it's not a nice feeling, it's not a pleasant feeling, but very often I think we need to come to that feeling. We need to really confront and sit with the pain of wasted time, and we need to acknowledge that we have to take some accountability for the time that we've wasted as adults who have a certain degree of control over what we do with our time. And I also think that the Tower can be representative not only potentially of that regret which comes from not valuing time until it's passed by, but also I think it can come from the negative stories and the unhelpful narratives that we weave for ourselves when it comes to time management. There are so many excuses that people make when it comes to crappy time management. So many people say things to themselves that if they really looked at those stories, they would see that they weren't true. For example, somebody might say, well, I've got a really stressful job, and I've got the kids that I need to take care of, I've got all of these other responsibilities, so there's no way really that I have time to do this, or it's no wonder that in this little bit of free time I wasted it because I'm exhausted or I can't think straight. But actually, a lot of the ways in which we waste time, we are using our cognitive function. We are sometimes using our physicality. So it is possible for us to reroute that energy into doing something that is more useful and more positive and more in alignment with our goals. So often it's quite wrong to say, I've got no time whatsoever, or I can't use my time productively. If we look at the ways in which we waste time, and let's face it, a lot of it is in sort of being swallowed by the internet, being swallowed by social media, mindlessly scrolling, or watching episode after episode of something, we are engaging our cognitive function, we are having thoughts, and we are sometimes having ideas, but we're being very passive in that energy usage. We're not allowing that energy usage to work for us. And I think a lot of people as well do tell themselves really crappy and untrue stories about the extent to which they have free time that they can use, about the extent to which they have the freedom to select what they're going to do with their time. I think a lot of people do talk as though their hands are well and truly tied. And to those people, I would say, well, if you feel like your hands are well and truly tied and you have no time that is your own to do things that you want to do, you really need to assess your life. You really need to ask yourself, why is it that you feel you have no free time whatsoever to do what it is that you want to do with your life? Everyone should have some small measure of time to do what they want to do. The other thing I would ask someone that's got themselves into that kind of mindset is it really true? Honestly, is it genuinely true that you have no free time, or that your hands are really tied and all of your free time needs to be filled in with other things? Is it really true that there is no moment when you could dedicate yourself to your passion or do something which is in alignment with your goals? Is that genuinely true? I think for a lot of people, we tell ourselves this kind of story once we are looking in the rearview mirror at the time that we've wasted and we feel regretful. Because when we feel regretful, we often also feel defensive and guarded. We look at the way that we've wasted the time and the resources that we had, and we feel angry with ourselves. We also feel extremely keen to justify the ways in which we've spent our time. So even if we have just spent the entire evening or the entire weekend watching Netflix when we could have been studying or, making art or whatever, even though we can see logically that we might have spent our time in a more useful way, we still feel very keen to justify the way in which we did spend our time. And that's because it's uncomfortable and it's unpleasant to confront the fact that the time was actually wasted and that you will never get that time back. So I think people instantly move into these defensive little stories which kind of back up the wasted time and almost act as a get out clause for someone who has wasted time. Ask yourself if you've ever done that. Have you ever wasted a whole bunch of time and then found yourself trying to justify that time wastage either to yourself or to someone else in your life because you would rather try to justify it and wriggle out of it than really confront it and sit with the reality of it? I think the Tower very much tells us that we do need to see time as sacred, and we do need to see time as something which is passing us by. We do need to appreciate that linear time anyway, like clock face time, is the kind of time that goes by and then you don't get it again. It's not repeated. And during that time, you can either be productive and conscious and aware, or you can choose to go into zombie mode, check out, really zone out. And it's really up to you the extent to which you want to make that time work for you. And you may not necessarily want to make all of that time work for you, but you may want to have conscious downtime as opposed to just tuning out, being a zombie, and then later on kind of snapping back to reality and going, oh shit, it's 9 o'clock at night. Oh my God, I'm really upset. So it's really about being conscious with the time that you do spend zoning out, watching Netflix, that kind of stuff, versus the free time that you spend actually engaging in things and being productive and doing what you really want to do. Oh my God, I just heard the creepiest child's laugh outside. Oh my God, that was so Village of the Damned. Oh, fuck that noise. I'm actually really glad that the Tower card came up because it's so often a representation of a very negative feeling, something that we feel negatively about, right? And I think a lot of us do feel negative about the clock face. A lot of us do feel that time is being stolen from us, that we're spending too much time engaged in things we don't necessarily want to be doing. A lot of us feel like we never have enough time, or we wonder where the time goes. There's a lot of negativity around one's relationship with time, and I think what the Tower is really advising is that we do start to think of time as something that is sacred and as something that is a kind of a form of wealth in a way, and we can either invest that wealth or we can sort of fritter it away in a very frivolous kind of way. Every single morning that you know that you've got things that you want to do, things that you want to accomplish, tell yourself, I am time rich today. I have a wealth of time. I have an abundance of time. What do I choose to do with that time? Where will I spend it? How will I best invest it? And I think that's one of the ways that you can start to be more conscious of time as something that you have and something that you can use to your supreme advantage. Let's draw another card then to really focus now on how you can figure out what you most want to do with your time. How can you ensure that you are prioritizing properly? How can you make sure that you have a handle on what it is that you really want to do and be committed to that, and make sure that you spend your time on that rather than on other petty distractions or less important priorities? Just put some more lights on. I'll see if that makes the situation any better. Okay, so this card to help us to figure out what we want to do with our time and how we want to spend our time is Justice. How interesting. I love the fact that this is another card from Major Arcana, and you can see the Justice card here does kind of borrow from the concept that is so kind of Rider-Waite-Smith approved, but again it takes it off-road, and that's something I really love about Holly Simple Tarot. It's that really kind of not too subtle nod to the Rider-Waite imagery, but really going off on its own thing and bringing something completely new to the energy of each card. So I do like the fact that the Justice card has come through. Justice often relates to the concept of spending your time and your energy in areas where you're going to get the most return on that investment of time and energy. And this is really about you being very honest with yourself and asking yourself, where is your emotional bias? What are you biased towards in terms of the way that you spend your time and what you really want to do with your time? For me, I know that I am supremely biased in favour of spiritual activity, spending time at the altar, playing with my cards for me, really writing for me, journaling for me. I love to spend free time doing that. I'm also really biased in the direction of spending time with certain human beings in my life. That feels really good. I get a massive return on that investment of time and energy. You know, there's different things that I really want to do. I love making art. That's something that I really enjoy. And so I'm biased in that direction. My heart calls me in that direction. I feel filled up as a result of going in that direction. So you might say that my internal scales are tilted in that direction. You know, the weight of desire in that direction is very strong. And that's kind of the exploration that I think Justice is really asking you to go on as well. Think about what your heart is tilted in favour of versus what doesn't seem to provide quite so much nourishment and nurturing and interest for you. Obviously, Justice is also a card that's very much about balance, and I think that it's really appropriate when we think about our priorities and when we think about how we most want to spend our time, that we are encouraged to think about balance. Because look, there's going to be so many times in your life where you wish you had 5 hours to dedicate to something, or you wish you had the whole weekend to dedicate to something. You wish you had more time to dedicate to your passion, your project, your hobby, whatever it is that you want to do. But the reality will be, in a lot of cases, that you do not have quite the amount of time that you wish you did have. It's a little bit like going on holiday. Even if you're on holiday for 10 days instead of 7, you still wish it could be 14, right? You still want more and more and more, but that doesn't mean that you don't go on the holiday. Just because the holiday is only a week and not 10 days doesn't mean that you're not going to go on that holiday. Just because it's 10 days rather than 2 weeks, does that mean you're going to cancel the holiday? Does that mean it's not worth it? And I think that's how we have to start to think about our free time and how we think about time management. For me, if I know that I've only got, an hour of free time to myself, I'm going to try very hard not to convince myself that it's not worth doing a piece of art because I can only work on it for an hour. Instead, I'm going to convince myself to take that hour and use it to begin the piece of art, which no doubt I will then go on to complete later, but at least I've made that strong start. And that can be something that I think is actually really difficult for people a lot of the time. We tell ourselves, if only I had all this time, if only I had as much time as I wanted and needed, then absolutely I would start this, then absolutely I would put the time and effort in. But why do we tell ourselves that? Why don't we utilise even the very small scraps of time time that we have? Why aren't we more ferocious with that time? Why aren't we more precious with that time? And I think a lot of the answer to that for a lot of people is fear, to be honest with you. I think that we can very much stand on the sidelines and convince ourselves that we would be both feet in if only we had all the time in the world. But actually, who the fuck does have all the time in the world for something? And yet still people compose symphonies, still people write poetry, still people train for marathons, you know, despite the fact that they don't have all the time. So I think it's really, you know, a straightforward mindset shift, and it's really separating, in a way, those who convince themselves they really would take action if they had so much time, and then actually those people who are like, you know what, I don't have all the time in the world, but I'm going to use the time I've got right now. I'm going to make a dent in the time that I've got right now. And for me, it was about deciding more where I want to be on the spectrum, and I still have to make that decision every single day, and sometimes I don't actually make the one that I wish I had made. You know, sometimes I definitely do get that rear view mirror tower feeling of regret that I didn't spend the time in a more beneficial way. But I definitely can at least see now that there is that daily choice that I need to make. And that, for me, has been a really big personal evolution. So I would ask you to ask yourself, are you the kind of person who delays on something because you're convinced that you don't have enough time to make it worthwhile? Do you tell yourself, oh, I really, you know, I would go and journal, but I'm going to have to make dinner in an hour, or I would do this and that, but I've got to go to work in 3 hours, you know, so there's no point in starting now, you know? Is that the kind of story that you tell yourself? Because I think what the Justice card asks you to consider is that you're always going to have a balance between things you want to do and how you want to spend your time versus the responsibilities, the other things that you've got on your plate that you may not necessarily feel so passionate about. And still you have an obligation to yourself to utilize your free time as well as you can. And sometimes that means accepting that no, you don't have all the time in the world, but you're going to use the time that you do have a little bit more fruitiously. Oftentimes when I see the Justice card, another thing that really comes up for me that I think is so beautiful is the idea of doing things that make a difference, doing something that really makes an impact in the world, doing something that not only leaves some form of personal legacy, but also just helps. It makes a difference. It changes something. It puts a ripple in the big river of consciousness. And if you can be doing anything with your time whatsoever, even as brief as that time is, that makes you feel like you have made some kind of discernible difference and you've done your bit to bring about positive change in the world, I think the Justice card implies that that might be a really important thing to consider and a really important piece of action to take. I think sometimes as spiritual people, we don't urge ourselves to think enough about the difference we could make in daily life, because a lot of people that are very spiritual and very motivated by spiritual thinking and spiritual practice are also very highly sensitive, and sometimes they can feel like all the energies that are going on with all of the crap that's happening in the world is really just very overwhelming, and it's kind of it's like a landslide of feeling all the time and having to deal with that. And so actually I think in a lot of ways spirituality and the dialogue around spirituality can be incredibly selfish in its nature, because a lot of it is about, you know, how do we protect ourselves from what's going on in the world? How do we make sure that with our heightened sensitivity and our spiritual perception, we don't get trampled underfoot by all this negative energy? And I think those conversations are really important to have. There's no doubt about it. But when we get completely sidetracked with those conversations about how we can protect ourselves and how we can shield ourselves and make sure we're safe, we forget about the conversations that it's absolutely vital that we have as people who claim to be spiritual. And those conversations are around making a difference, helping, showing up, being activists, you know, forging alliances with each other and really showing up for each other and loving and giving and being of service in the world. I don't see actually enough discussions of that ilk going on. And I feel like, you know, that's the discussion that I want to have with myself much more these days. And I want to think about how I'm utilizing my time, you know, at least somewhat more than I was before in terms of making a difference and in terms of using my voice, using my power, using my platform if necessary, using my energy, using my money, using my focus, using everything that I've got at my disposal, including my smile and my empathy, to make a difference in the world and be that ripple in the big river of consciousness. So I think Justice Justice also very much asks us to look at that too. I do see Justice as a card that has a lot to do with social activism, with making a difference, you know, with love revolution, with being there and standing up for what's right and fighting injustice. So I definitely think, you know, the card does speak to us a lot about those things too. And I think, you know, sometimes it's about asking yourself how you are using your time to make the difference in any way that you can, and is that something that you want to do moving forward. Okay, so the final card that I'm going to be drawing today from Holly Simple Tarot is going to help us to figure out how we can form stronger, more positive habits when it comes to time management. And let's really have a look at which card kind of comes through for this and see what it can tell us about positive habits and making sure that our relationship with time is tighter, more high vibe, and really gives us a better return on our investment. So the card that has come through is Mother of Pentacles. What an awesome one to receive, lastly but not leastly. So Mother of Pentacles in Holly Simple, I love, 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 because you can see that this is a rattlesnake figure with a kind of pentacle, third eye, if you will, in deep meditation, protecting her 4 little ones that have literally the most adorable faces that you will ever see. How fucking cute is that card? And I really enjoy the kind of muted, sort of hazy, dusty yellow with that very loud acid yellow in the rattlesnake tail. That really does it for me. And also the clash of that kind of electric blue with that slightly more royal blue as well. So I really enjoy the clashing colours here with Mother of Pentacles. Now, I think Mother of Pentacles is a really perfect card to see us out when it comes to the topic of time management, and particularly creating healthy habits around time management, because Mother of Pentacles, I think, is very much a figure in tarot who knows that nothing like this comes easy. It's all about discipline, and it's all about learning from your mistakes. When I look at Mother of Pentacles, I know that she didn't become the Mother of Pentacles overnight. I know that she didn't reach that stature, that experience, that skill and that confidence without going through some baptisms of fire along the way and experiencing some mistakes and some setbacks and pitfalls, which she actually kind of ended up weaving into her understanding of how to be better and do better in the world. So this means that every single time we fail on something to do with time management, every time we don't do what we said we were going to do, or we do an experiment with our time management and it doesn't quite kind of cut the mustard, we get to see that as literally a really useful experience for us in the overall journey of being better at managing time, because the mistakes are golden. They are so much a part of the treasure of learning how to have a better relationship with time. On my personal journey, I have tried loads of different things to help myself get better with time management. I've tried electronic time management devices. I do paper planning. I've had a combination of the two, and that's what I currently use. I've looked at all kinds of things, to-do lists. I've looked at breaking down the day into 1 hour slots and looking back over the day at how I've spent each of those hours. I've looked at setting time aside to do various things once a week that normally would have cluttered up my time throughout the week. For example, now I don't usually let myself watch YouTube videos whenever I want. I clear out my watch later list at the end of every week and I fill it full of things during the week that I want to watch, whether that's documentaries, whether it's videos from the witchy or tarot community. And then I normally give myself a little bit of time on Friday night or over the weekend where I really just like have a video fest. I go into my watch later list and I let myself watch everything that I've saved for the week. You know, that kind of thing. It took me ages to implement that. I messed up on it so many times, but eventually I realized it was the right thing for me. I realized I got a massive kick out of doing it, and now it's not very long whatsoever, if any, time that I spend during the week on watching YouTube videos. It's only if it's something that I feel is really majorly urgent that I will let myself watch it. So I really enjoy that, and that's something that, like I said, I've definitely fallen down on, and I continue to try to implement it because it was right for me. Mother of Pentacles is about cultivating healthy habits over time. She understands that things require a growth period. They require a period of organic cultivation in order to reach a really positive conclusion. She's not trying to change everything overnight. That is not her principle. That is not her guiding force. She is much more about slow and gradual experiments and tweaks and changes in order to get a long-term change that is really beneficial and has been grown, like I said, in that very paced, consistent and organic way. So she's definitely not about doing a complete, 180 on your life overnight. She's definitely not about convincing you that every single thing that you're doing wrong or that you're struggling with can change overnight. She's much more about implementing some experiments that you can do and see how you get on with them, see whether or not they fit you, whether they don't fit you, and tweak them as appropriate. And I think that would much more be the advice that she would give in terms of creating those long-lasting positive habits. It's not about saying to yourself, right, that's it, I'm never going to waste time again, I'm definitely going to always do what I set out to do, I'm going to pack every single day full of useful things, I'm not going to, waste my time like this anymore, or waste my time like that anymore. It's not about that. It's not about being very, very super high pressure and being almost very intense with the goal that you're trying to hit. I think Mother of Pentacles is much more about that organic growth and just looking at things with a degree of self-honesty and figuring out what the main tweaks are that you can actually kind of implement in the short term, and then experiment with those tweaks, see if they work for you and see what the payoff is and whether or not those tweaks would be of benefit to continue with. Mother of Pentacles would definitely encourage you not to be discouraged or put out by your mistakes. Instead, like I said earlier, it's about seeing your mistakes as something that provides you with the richness and the wealth of experience. Every single time something has gone completely sideways with me when it comes to time management, and it could be for any number of different reasons, I've looked at it and I've thought, how can I learn from this? What can I tweak to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What really happened here? Was it something to do with my mental health and well-being? Was it a resistance that came from fear? Is there something that I need to shadow work here? Was it an issue to do with someone else and their time management skills? And do I need to either talk to them or maybe distance myself from collaboration with them? What do I need to do? What do I need to tweak? What do I need to look at? What do I need to confront? And I think that's much more, I would hope anyway, a Mother of Pentacles way of addressing the formulation of long-standing positive habits with time management. I don't want to be really super duper aggressive with myself, and I would say that you shouldn't be either, especially if you know that time management is a particular issue for you. It does tend to be a rough ride for you. It's okay to recognize that, and it's okay to implement experiments slowly and steadily rather than, insisting that you're just gonna snap your fingers and from tomorrow everything's gonna be gravy. You don't want to think like that. You want to be gentle with yourself and actually enjoy the journey, enjoy the experimentations, learn from them and implement them in a way that isn't too overwhelming and isn't too many at once, so you can really figure out how things work for you. One of the best things I ever did for myself in terms of time management, and I'm going to grab it because it's right here, it's always close to me when I'm at home, is getting myself a Filofax and organising myself a paper planning system. Please don't panic, I do not use all of this every day. I only use this section for every day as that is my diary, my to-do lists, etc. But there are other things in here that are really important, like lists and notes, my gym sessions, etc. For me, this is what works. It's not going to be what works for everyone, and it is about trial and error of finding what works for you. I'm going to leave a link down below to a video that I did about my planning system and how it works for me and why I like it. So if you want to know more about that, you can find that down below. But like I said, it is definitely about experimenting over time, finding what works for you. And I feel like I found my sweet spot with time management now. In fact, I have a system where by the end of every day, or by the end of every working day anyway, by the end of every day where I'm at home, either working or wanting to do house related chores or whatever, I can actually see the breakdown of what I've done hour by hour. That's really important to me because if I've wasted a big chunk of time, I want to be able to see that on paper. I want to be able to see exactly how much time I wasted through the day and be honest with myself about that and decide to do better the next day, and also to potentially analyze what went wrong in terms of me ending up wasting so much time. So it's always a learning curve for me. It's always something that requires self-honesty. And like I said, any time where I want to be productive and I have stuff to get done, I am usually doing that thing where I'm kind of monitoring hour on hour what I generally spent the time doing. That's important to me because I'm very, very bad with time. I am a real sucker for time wastage, and so for me, my system has had to be very high and tight and dedicated, and it's almost like a conscious checking in when it comes to what I've been doing with my time. Others do not necessarily feel that they need that much, and that's fine. Everybody's different. If you know that you really struggle with time management and you want to kick that habit this year, then I would definitely recommend starting to implement different time management experiments. Have a look at different ways that other people do it online. Have a look at the paper planning community and see how they utilize paper planning for time management and prioritizing. Do what you've got to do to find what works for you. And with that, it is the end of this Tea and Tarot episode. I have really enjoyed delving in to this particular topic. I find it really interesting, and it's something that I have definitely had a few sort of very serious words with myself about in the last few years. You know, time management is something that, like I said, it's not my strong point whatsoever, and I've definitely had to have a few serious conversations with myself about how I was going to deal with it, and I'm definitely not out of the woods. It's going to be a lifelong struggle. I'm not a natural type A personality, you know, but I am trying to masquerade as one and doing kind of well with it, kind of, mostly. Okay, so I'm going to go and finish the rest of my sour cherry infusion now, guys, and I'm going to go and speak to a client in about 10 minutes time, and I just hope that these insights have been useful, and I hope this episode has given you some stuff to chew on. If you want to have a reading with me, if you want me to draw some cards for you and tell you what kinds of insights and advice I see for you, you can pop over to my online store and have a look at the Work With Me tab. I'm going to leave the link to the online store below, and I'm also going to leave some links to various different purchase options that you might be particularly interested in if you have found the insights and the theme of this video helpful. Okay, much love, guys. Until next time, mwah, blessed be.